This video serves two purposes, and it's related to Bionicle, specifically how to support rare colors with Bionicle builds. It can be a challenge, sometimes a fun challenge, to use rare colors in your builds, whether you are building with Generation 1 or 2 Bionicle. And there were some colors that I think were woefully neglected. It's unfortunate to have known that colors like Mata Green, for example, would all but disappear from Bionicle after 2003. And though brown often gets the boot, as it was very obviously replaced in 2006 with Keat Orange and later with other colors as well, it is sad to see colors like green, like brown as well, go. Now, thankfully, tan did come in for a very short time to steal the show, to steal that spotlight and fill in the place of brown with sets like Vorox and Zesk, which I think did a wonderful job, even if they didn't always introduce quite enough new pieces, in my opinion. That said, though, there are a lot of pieces that LEGO produces today that feel right at home in something like Bionicle. In fact, even today with Ninjago and its strong run with the new Dragons Rising wave, I've seen a lot of new pieces in this that I can't wait to get my hands on, honestly. Not because they are Bionicle pieces, but they feel appropriate. We're going to go ahead and take a look at one of those pieces here in just a moment. But I wanted to talk about something for a handful of minutes, a couple of things here. Some of it's going to touch on CCBS, of course, and some of it is going to touch on, hopefully, we'll see how this goes, a plan for tomorrow. So tomorrow I go to the store. It's my day of the week, if you will, to go grocery shopping, where I get whatever it is I need. And I figured I would also go ahead and stop in and grab one of the $10 Ninjago Spinjitzu sets, whatever you want to call them, right? I plan on getting the Arin's Dragon Slammer, I think is what that's called, or Dragon Strike, something like that. The reason I want to get that one specifically is because it comes with a dragon head, as the other dragons from that series do, but it's in Keat Orange, if you're familiar with that color. Bright yellowish orange, bright light yellow, bright light orange, whatever. Bright light yellow is definitely the wrong name for it, but you get my point here, right? And why that one specifically? I'm gonna be honest. It's probably the most boring of the three in terms of the color scheme, at least on the box, but the Keat Orange is a bit special. There actually aren't that many Keat Orange masks from Bionicle in general. You do get the Ignika from 2009, thanks to the Matanui Glatorian set, of course, Teleris beside him, and the Dakar set from 2007 also has one as well. There are other sets that use blended masks using the Keat Orange color, which is always nice to see, but it's actually a bit more obscure of a color than you might think. It is on a lot of sets, and oftentimes on limbs or feet or armor, but a lot of sets don't use it for a head. And so I thought to myself, well, I'm taking on this series with the Sky Pirates theme, and part of this theme is going to be centered around dragons and dinosaurs, right? So how cool would it be to try to manipulate one of these pieces, mess around with them, see if I can find any kind of connection that they might have that could work for something like a Glatorian figure. We're going to take a look at one of those sets here as well. Just pictures, of course. I don't have the sets in hand yet, but let's take a look at the Ninjago mech first, a piece that I was sort of hinting at a moment ago. This set here, I have the name blocked out right now, so I don't know what it is, but it is a mech for Kai, and it looks pretty cool. It's quite large, very bulky, but in a way that feels right for this type of build, with the red, Keat Orange, and gold on it as well, which is an interesting color scheme at the very least. I do like the lightning pieces used here as flames or something flame-like at the very least in trans orange. It looks lovely. But you'll notice that there is a new piece on the shoulders here as well, and also used on these knees. These pieces look lovely, honestly. They have these bar connections on the legs, which is pretty cool, and does mean that there can be some uses with CCBS, very easily connecting to that, as well as having studs on the tops, sides, but also an axle hole, and that's important to me. A piece like that, in theory, should be reasonably easy to utilize with something like the 2009 Glatorian double socket on the arm, for example. I don't have the piece, so I don't know that that works per se, but playing around with it should be pretty interesting, and they're quite bulky pieces at that. I don't know all of the different colors they come in just yet, as this is the first time I've seen them, and I do plan on looking at them more, but they look lovely, and it's nice to see pieces like that, because those types of pieces have a decent amount of potential, at the very least, with sets from Bionicle. And yes, it does mean studs, which you can cover up with your own pieces as well, or utilize them as, well, details if you want. I think it does work. I think the piece is well designed for that reason. And of course, the SCCBS system, as it has been growing, has been introducing more pieces like this. There's a lot to love here. But I think what else is neat too is that LEGO hasn't forgotten about any of those old colors. Brown still exists, although it is reddish brown now, but you still see it utilized quite heavily. In fact, today we have colors like dark brown, which really didn't exist throughout most of the entirety of Bionicle's run, at least in its first iteration. What I really like about this, though, is that it means that there's a lot of potential here. Generation 2 Bionicle, for all of its flaws, did do some pretty interesting things, introducing colors like dark orange as something more prominent than what it once was. It's a beautiful color. Colors like bright green, for example, which had existed in LEGO while Bionicle was still running its first time around, but never saw its use in the theme. And even colors like dark azure, medium azure that would come later. All of these colors are absolutely incredible looking. I love the combination, for example, of the medium azure with white. It's got such a nice presence to it for an ice character. The color scheme that LEGO came up with and swiftly abandoned for the Toa of Jungle Liwa for 2015 was gorgeous. The play on that bright green with that bright light orange, Keat orange color is honestly unrivaled in my opinion, and I love it. So it is unfortunate when I look at sets or themes like that and find out, well, only one mask comes in bright green solid. Yes, other masks use the color, but often blend it with something else, and the same is true for dark azure as well. I was very happy at the very least, although I still criticize masks like this, that at least it came in some interesting colors like this one here. It's always lovely to get something in a new color, especially when there's support for that color. And that's why I'm making this video, to talk about the support. What do I mean when I say support? Support to me essentially means that there is a backing for a color to utilize. A set like the Paraka Thok set, which comes with that very light bluish gray color, as cool as that color is, honestly, it's unfortunate that we only ever saw it once in Bionicle. That's technically not true. The Karapar mask from the Toa Terrain Crawler also includes that color blended with black, and if you don't have it, I highly recommend getting it. It's a beautiful piece. But that color actually did make appearances elsewhere in LEGO, both in system, but also in Technic, which you might not realize at first, because it didn't show up in a Technic set per se. It showed up in LEGO Mindstorms, and a handful of different lift arms were made in this color, giving you the allowance to actually build maybe even Titans with this color. I find it a comforting challenge. Thok, for all it's worth, did come with a reasonable array of pieces in that color, enough so that you can build things that look different each time around. Having the larger two-toed Paraka foot is easy to utilize as a torso armor, or using the arm pieces for legs, as difficult as that can be sometimes, gives you something that can look vastly different from the Thok set, while very clearly paying homage to it. So I find colors like that fascinating. The same is true for dark azure, and it's true for colors like this spring yellowish green. It's a lovely color. It's often paired with dark blue, which makes sense. The colors complement each other really well. Can you tell that I am tired? With that said, though, another set came out relatively recently. In fact, two sets came out introducing this piece right here, the Glatorian neck from 2009, in two brand new colors. Technically, they're a new mold, and I'll talk about that here in a second. But this piece always fascinated me because it was essentially the same or a very similar family of piece to the Hordika head, which, if you're not aware, also comes in orange, red, and of course the dark bluish gray. But it always struck me as odd that so many pieces from 2004 and 2005 actually didn't get recolored. They'd appear in colors like dark bluish gray. That was basically it. The Hordika neck for a very long time was one of those pieces, locked behind just one color, and a lot of people were upset about that. The Metru Matoran arm, same kind of thing. It does have two colors, although the other one is easy to miss. But this one, interestingly enough, got a brand new recolor in 2016 Bionicle. And I don't think it was necessary, but I do appreciate it. Dark orange. A very strange color choice, I would think. It makes an appearance on a handful of sets, though I believe was featured on just one at the time. But it's a lovely set. It's a lovely piece, rather. The set is arguably a little different. That said, this piece has since also been recolored in standard green, which again is lovely to have support for, but also, of all colors, light nougat, which I find fascinating. Light nougat is not a color that has a lot of support. In fact, it has very minimal support in Bionicle. No support, really. It does see some with CCBS, thanks to the Star Wars construction line. So we got a handful of shells, fist pieces in that color, which is nice to see. It's fun to see when something is made in an obscure color like this, but in some ways it's a double-edged sword. Because as the support for that color begins to open, you want to continue to see that color established. Dark turquoise is a perfect example of this. One of probably the fan favorite colors from early Bionicle, and of course early Lego for that matter, or maybe not early, but the 90s, right? And yet went away so quickly, only to eventually make a return, because it was a pretty popular color, and you see it a lot nowadays. There's nothing really like it from Lego, maybe the closest thing being that Dark Azure that I mentioned before. But now, thankfully, we have seen Technic sets even feature the color. Not heavily yet, and I do hope that that changes, but the same can be said for that bright green, which appears in just a handful of Technic sets. It's lovely to see because when you want to go out of your way to actually build something in those colors, you have options. But what about the colors that are limiting? What about the new colors as well? Reddish orange, for example. I do hope that we see colors like that one day in themes like Technic and, of course, sprawling out elsewhere. Colors are important, not only because they allow you to express yourself in more ways, because you're now open to build with whatever colors you want, but it's also just important to have options. Maybe not because you're going to use them, but because someone else may explore the exact idea you've once come up with. And, you know, that's what it's all about. So as I mentioned, I was going to talk very briefly about the new mold for this piece, and of course show off that dragon set as well. The new mold, I don't have it in hand, unfortunately. All it changes is the holes in the ball joint at the end, which I was never really sure why Lego added a single hole on these in the first place, or changed the mold for this to add a hole as well, pretty early on. But adding the 3 holes there, I think it may be to save plastic, honestly. I don't know what else it would do other than perhaps making it a little bit easier to click a socket on in specifically one orientation. I hold up that CCBS piece not only because I don't have that new neck mold, but also because I pulled this off of this string of CCBS limbs. These are not all of the green limbs that I have, but I tend to sort my limbs by colors and attach them together. And I just wanted you to note, although that's not the purpose of this video, and it just came apart, that with the exception of one of these pieces, every single one of these is cracked. Yes, I've had a lot of people talk about my other CCBS videos, sort of dogging on it, saying that they've never had a CCBS piece break, and I'm happy for you. But every one of these is cracked, and that's not anything unique. These are not pieces that I set aside for any other reason than being green. But I believe this one right here is the only one that is not cracked. Yes, many of these are trans lime green, others are trans bright green, and we also have the olive green here as well. That's not a good statistic, but that's not the point of this video. And that's just greens. It is true for most of the other CCBS pieces I have. It is not a factor with just green as a color, although we all know how notorious lime green can be to cracking. So anyway, the set that I hopefully plan on picking up tomorrow, if my mouse wakes up, is going to be not this one, actually. I pulled up a different color because it shows up a little bit better on camera, but this is one of the 3 Dragon Spinjitzu sets for the wave, right? That's often something that Ninjago does, where the sets spin around. Neat gimmick, whatever, right? But specifically, I want something like this for that headpiece. It is a proprietary piece. It does have proprietary connections, although it does feature some bar connections on the back of the head, not visible here. They're not centered. Actually, there's 2 of them, one on each side, which means that there is actually no central connection on this, which is going to make it a little bit harder to utilize just because understandably they didn't put anything in the middle of the head because this head actually goes over the top of a ball. It's one of the gimmicks of this wave. But it's a wonderful looking piece, coming in red, dark azure, and again, that bright light orange, Keat orange color. So I plan on getting the Keat orange one, mostly because it has support more so than dark azure does, although dark azure is a lovely color, and I would have loved to have seen these wings personally blended with trans dark blue rather than the trans light blue that is here, or maybe it's trans medium blue. I don't have the set in hand, so I cannot say. But I want to get the Keat orange because I have plans for it. It's not the most visually stunning color scheme by any means. I'm very glad, though, that at least they come with solid colored heads and not blended heads, because these pieces look beautiful. The way they are sculpted is honestly something special, and I hope we see this piece used more. Sure, you can make the argument, well, it's not a traditional Lego piece, it doesn't have Lego connections, but that's okay to me. I've made this argument in the past that I think something like masks can have their own special shaping, and that's kind of the way you would treat this as well. It's a mask for the set. Yes, this is a very proprietary set, given the feature that it is supposed to have with this sort of slammer that launches it forward, or you slam down on it, put your finger in the way, and it spins. That's whatever. We'll test that hopefully tomorrow if I am able to get the set. But still, they're quite neat at the very least. I love the design of the wings, though they don't really have traditional connections featuring bars here instead. I would have liked to have seen maybe an empty bar hole at the tip of one of these wings, just so you had that extra connectability, but it's not there, and I'm not going to complain about it. They're lovely pieces, though, and I'm happy to see them at the very least. So I think I went a little bit longer on this video than I needed to, but at the same time, there was a lot to be said. So, of course, if you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, because it does really help out the channel. And, of course, as always, you can join in the conversation, both in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on these dragons specifically. That is probably what I'm most interested in here, because I plan on getting one. And which one is your favorite, color scheme-wise, if you have experience with them, or for any other reason. Of course, you can also join the conversation in the Discord, Instagram, or Patreon if you want to support the channel. Get some perks down in the description below, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.